Hello, I'm Brian Tracy, and over the years I've trained more than 2 million salespeople in 60 countries, in thousands of companies, in virtually every industry. And many of my graduates, I'm glad to say thousands of them, have gone to the top of their industries and become extraordinarily successful by learning and practicing some of the principles we're going to talk about in this program. And one of the things I like to talk about with my professionals like yourself is what I call the new realities of selling. And these are sort of the new facts of selling. One of the hardest things for people to do is to shift gears and to adjust to the fact that the world has changed. The world economy has changed, customers have changed, technology has changed, and what worked in the past may not work in the future, at least without some modifications. So here's a good question. What are the most important factors that determine sales success or failure in today's market? And the reason we're talking about this is because you need to change your mindset, as we'll talk about a little bit later. However, in every market, in every industry, there are salespeople and customers who continue to make sales and grow and prosper. One of my clients who uses some of these techniques is in a market that has declined by 32% in the last couple of years because of the economy and because of competition. His sales have grown 40%. And he's continuing to expand, and his profitability is continuing to expand in a declining market. Now, why is this? It's because he is doing things differently, and as a result, he's getting different results. Now, here's the fact, new reality. Because of ever greater competition, the great reality of today's life, customer demands, concerns about costs, and uncertainty, the companies and individuals who survive and thrive are fast and flexible in rapidly changing conditions, and so must you be. As Charles Darwin wrote in his book, The Origin of Species, he wrote, "Survival goes not to the strongest or most intelligent, but to the one who is most adaptable to change." Your ability to adapt to change is really essential. So in this program, you're going to learn some wonderful things that will help you. You're going to learn how to focus your efforts on your best market opportunities. You're going to learn how to identify the very best prospects for your products and services. You're going to learn how to lower buyer resistance to your offers, and you're going to learn how to put yourself on the path to continuous learning and growth in your field. The first new reality of selling is that there are more sellers than there are buyers today, and more sellers than ever before. The three words that are most important in your future are competition, competition, and competition. The competition today in your field is more fierce and more determined than ever before. Another new reality is that there are fewer customer dollars available for an ever-expanding and desirable assortment of products and services. Today we have hundreds of thousands of products and services and millions of companies trying to get the customer dollar, and if you're in business, you are competing with them every single day. Now here's another reality. Whatever got you to where you are today is not enough to keep you there or to get you any further ahead. In other words, your level of knowledge and skill today is as high as you can go. The only way that you can move forward is you have to learn and practice new things. Now, selling today is more complex than ever before. When I began selling, I actually started cold calling. And you'd knock on a door, meet the prospect, establish rapport, make a presentation, and make a sale or not, get the money and leave. But today, product and service offerings and prices and capabilities are more complex than ever before, which means it requires more time for a customer to make a buying decision. Today, customer needs and wants and desires and problems are more complex than ever before. Again, extending the time it takes to make a buying decision for even little things. As a result of this, multiple customer contacts and meetings are required to make a sale. You can't just walk in and meet the customer and make a sale with almost any product or service. It takes more time. Now, another major reality today is that selling today requires greater focus and clarity than ever before. My favorite word in selling is always clarity. Clarity. Last year in the U.S. alone, they spent more than $8 billion on market research. And the whole purpose of the market research was to clearly identify exactly who the ideal customer is for which product. So here are some questions that you have to ask. First of all, who exactly is your ideal customer? This is so important that if you're not clear about this, you can waste a lot of time approaching and talking to the wrong people who cannot or will not buy within a reasonable period of time. So how do you describe your ideal customer? Well, again, in market research, they find there's two ways to describe your customer. One is with regard to what are called demographics. Now, demographics are things that you can see and that you can measure. For example, the age of your ideal customer. What is it? The educational level of your ideal customer. The income level. The location where your customer lives or works. The family situation. Do they married? Do they have children? Are the family younger or older? And of course, the occupation. What does the ideal prospect do? Now, another way that you can analyze your ideal customer is what are called the psychographics. Now, the psychographics are far more subtle. They are the things that are going on inside the mind of your ideal prospect. These are the customer's desires and their ambitions and their hopes and their worries and especially their fears and their aspirations for the future. In other words, what does your ideal customer really, really want? And especially, where does your ideal customer want to be as a result of using your product or service? If you're clear about this, and you can show your prospect that your product or service will help him achieve his goals and dreams and aspirations, the sale almost takes place by itself. Now, here's another great question, which is the essence of market research, is why does your ideal customer buy from you rather than from your competition? In other words, what is it that you offer that causes your customer to buy from you? Or another way of asking it is, what is your competitive advantage? Now, as a salesperson, you can't go out of the office unless you know clearly your competitive advantage, your area of excellence or superiority. What makes your product or service superior to your competition? And this becomes the essence or the focal point of all of your selling efforts, all your advertising, all your marketing. Why is your product or service better than your competitors? And how can you emphasize that to an interested prospect? Now, another new reality of selling is that selling today requires greater preparation than ever before. When I started off in selling, we used to just simply go out the door and knock on doors and call on customers. And the questions we would ask are, what do you do here anyway? Or what kind of a business is this? Or how long have you been in this job? Or what is your job? In other words, we didn't know anything when we called on customers. Today, if you call on a customer, which is very hard to do, to get an appointment, and you don't know these things, you look like an idiot. Now, here is one of the greatest breakthroughs in modern selling. Sometimes I ask, what is the most important single factor in business success that determines how many sales you make, how quickly you make sales, how many resales, how many referrals you get, the size of your income, the car you drive, the home you live in, and your whole future? And the answer is the critical factor is credibility. Credibility is everything. And let me explain to you why. Whenever you meet a customer for the first time, they have very high levels of fear. They're afraid of buying the wrong product, paying too much, getting stuck with something where there's something better in the market. So they have high levels of fear and low levels of trust. However, everything that you do to build your credibility lowers their fears of making a mistake. When your credibility is high enough with your prospect, they will buy from you and buy again and tell their friends. And this is why preparation is so important. The more thoroughly you prepare before meeting the customer, especially the first time, the higher is your credibility. When you walk in and you tell the prospect that you've done a good deal of background research to learn about him or her and his or her situation, and of course the place to go is on the internet, they're really impressed that you care about them enough to want to learn about them before you take up their time. Now, there's 3 key parts to preparation. Number 1 is called pre-call research. This is where you gather as much information as you possibly can about the customer before you call on them for the first time. I had a salesman call on me a couple of years ago, and he had spent 6 weeks setting up an appointment with me when I was in town. When he arrived, he sat down with a big smile, and he's quite a bright guy, well-dressed. Big smile. He said, "Well, what do you do here anyway? What's your business?" I was shocked because I have one of the most extensive internet sites in the industry. All he had to do was click on Google, and he could have had more information about my business than he could possibly have handled. But he was too lazy even to check my name on the internet. When you call on a prospect and you're not thoroughly prepared, especially when you consider how much information is out there on the internet, you look like an idiot and your credibility goes straight through the floor. On the other hand, when you've done your homework, you look great. You look like a professional and you have high credibility. Now, the second part of preparation is called pre-call objectives or goals. In other words, what you do is you ask yourself, what questions am I going to ask? What is my goal for this call? What do I want to achieve? Now, sometimes people say, well, my goal is to make a sale. No. Sometimes your goal is to find out if this person is a prospect or a suspect. Maybe this person is really not in the market for your product at all. So your first meeting may be just to ask some questions and to find out. I worked with a beautiful sales executive once, and his first 2 meetings were not to sell his product, but were to establish trust and rapport with me, to get to know me and to understand my business without ever talking about his product. And he finally got me to the point where I was so comfortable with him and his company that all my objections went away, and I ended up spending millions of dollars with his company, and he never tried to sell me once. He just tried to build a relationship. Now, the third part of preparation is called post-call analysis. This is where you write down every detail immediately after the sales call. You keep a call record. You write down what the customer said and the questions you asked and what you agreed to do. Because remember, no matter how smart you are, you will forget 80 or 90% of everything in the customer conversation by the end of the day. You'll forget 90% or more by tomorrow. So what I do is immediately after speaking to a customer, I sit down, sometimes even in the waiting room, and I write down every detail. Then, when you go back to see the customer again in a week or 2 weeks, you review all of your information, and this becomes your part of your pre-call research. Sometimes I will ask my sales students, I'll say, does anybody do this? And they'll say yes. Oh, I keep careful notes. I said, have you noticed that when you review your notes prior to the next meeting, the only thing that you recognize is your handwriting? Why? It's because you have forgotten everything else. And everybody says, you're right. I've forgotten everything else. If I had not written it down, I wouldn't have remembered any of this. And when you go back into the next customer meeting and you say, Mr. Prospect, the last time we were talking, you said this and you said that and you were doing this. And how did that work out? The customer goes, wow, you must be a professional. You must have taken notes. Here's a rule. The power is always on the side of the salesperson with the best notes. Taking good notes can give you a winning edge in business, as we'll talk about in a subsequent session. Now, here's another new reality. Customers today are more demanding than ever before. They want more things. Now, why is this that customers are more demanding? The answer is because they can be, because they are much more knowledgeable about what's going on in the market, and they are much more careful about what they're doing. Customers today are also more skeptical and suspicious. Customers today have made a lot of buying mistakes, and they're determined not to make more buying mistakes in the future, and the way that they lower their possibilities of failure is by asking a lot of questions and demanding a lot from you. Now, another reason why customers are more suspicious is because they receive multiple offers of products and services available. Their competition is calling on them in every way possible, especially on the internet. And they can go onto the internet and they can find out where your product or service is available at the best prices in the world. It used to be that salespeople were the experts in a sales conversation. Today, it's turned around completely. The customer is now the expert. I have sat down with customers talking about selling or buying a product or service of mine, and they sit there and they go on the internet and they'll check and they'll look up information about the product I'm talking about, and they'll ask me about it. What about this? Your competitor is offering this at a lower price. How do you respond to that? And if you haven't checked what your competitor is doing, if you've not done your homework, oh my, you look silly, and your credibility goes straight down. As your credibility goes down, your chances of making a sale go down as well. Now here's another reason why customers are more demanding. This is because they have limited resources. They don't have as much money as they had before, and they're afraid of making a bad buying decision. Do you know that many individuals' careers are actually short-circuited because they made a bad buying decision? They made a bad buying decision, and as a result, their boss became angry with them. Sometimes people have actually been fired for making a wrong buying decision in a company. Sometimes they are criticized by their boss and their coworkers. Sometimes they're passed over for promotion. So if you're selling products to people in business, you have to realize that the political dynamics of buying from you are very important, and they're much more important than their relationship with you. Now here's another great new reality of selling. Sales today require multiple calls. As I mentioned before, it's not just to make a sale. The first call may be just to start a relationship and to discover if a need exists. When I prospected, I would call up and I would ask if I could have 10 minutes of their time to show them a result or benefit that they wanted or needed. And all I ever tried to get was 10 minutes. This changed my career, by the way. When I was selling sales training, I would say, hello, would you be interested in a method to increase your sales by 20 to 30% over the next 6 to 12 months? I perfected that question because this was a sales manager who was responsible for salespeople. They would always answer yes. I said, well, then I just need 10 minutes of your time to show you a process that's guaranteed to increase your sales by 20 to 30% over the next 6 to 12 months. What would be a convenient time for you? I used to get 4 out of 5, 9 out of 10 appointments with that very simple approach, offering a result or benefit and then asking for 10 minutes. And in that 10 minutes, we could discover if this was a real prospect or just a suspect, a person who could not or would not buy. So after the first call to establish a relationship and to determine if a need exists, the second and the third calls may be to make a presentation or to present a proposal to the customer to show how your product or service would work and how much it would cost. The fourth and fifth meetings may be to negotiate and finalize the purchase agreement and to close the sale. The average sale today requires 4.6 calls to make the sale. That's based on research and thousands of salespeople and dozens of industries. 4.6, I'm rounded off to maybe 5 calls or 5 customer contacts, 5 customer interactions or discussions or more to make a sale. You can't do it quickly. So as a result of these different calls, you need to think in what is called milestones. A milestone is a step in the sales process. For example, your first milestone is to get an appointment with a qualified prospect. Your second milestone is to establish a relationship and identify a need. Your third milestone may be to meet with other people who are critical to the sale. Your fourth milestone may be to make a presentation. Your fifth milestone may be to negotiate or discuss the presentation. Your sixth milestone may be to close the sale. Top salespeople think in terms of milestones, and they know that if they can get a salesperson into the top of the sales funnel, where they start moving through the process, a certain number will come out the bottom, and they can actually predict how many sales they're going to make in a month or a year by looking at how many people they have at each stage of the sales process. The next key reality of selling is that closing the sale is harder than ever before. And why is closing the sale so much more difficult? Well, first of all, customers have fewer resources. They don't have as much money, and customers are reluctant to change or try something new. Very often when you're talking to a customer, they already have something that is working for them. What you're offering them is something that is newer or better or faster or more convenient. But it's not as if they don't have anything. They already have something, and they are very uneasy about changing from something they have, what they're comfortable with, their comfort zone, to trying a new product or service. Another reason why customers will not buy from you, another reason why closing the sale is harder, is based on some of the rules of selling, which are these. The first rule is no authority, no sale. Now this is really important. In some of the advanced sales research, they say that the most important single step in the sales process is what is called access to power. In other words, you have to talk to somebody who has the authority to make a buying decision. If you can't get to that person directly or indirectly, you can't make a sale. You can talk to people at lower levels in an organization all day long, but if they don't have the authority to say yes or no, nothing happens. Another rule is no money, no sale. Now what does this mean? It means if the person does not have the money, the business is poor, their life situation is desperate, they're unemployed. If they don't have the money, no matter how much they want your product or service, they can't buy it. A third rule is no need, no sale. If the prospect does not perceive that they have a genuine need that your product or service can satisfy now, then no sale will take place. No matter how good your product is, and no matter how good the prospect is, if they don't perceive a need, then nothing happens. And the last reason why people don't buy, or why closing is harder, is no urgency. If there's no urgency, there's no sale. So you always have to look for some reason for the customer to buy now rather than later. Let me tell you a quick story. I went in to buy a new car a few years ago. And I looked at the car, and I looked at the similar cars in other dealerships. And I liked this car. It was the right color, right accessories. It was everything I wanted, and I was clear about that. And so I said to him, how much is it? What kind of a deal can I get? And then he said, well, there's one thing that you should know. Price was reasonable. One thing you should know is that we can offer you 4% interest rate on this car over 5 years. I said, why? Why is that? Well, the manufacturer has given us a special dispensation to offer actually 3.99% interest if you purchase the car. I said, well, how long does this last? He said, until 5 o'clock today. This is the last day of the month, and the interest rate goes up to 6.75% after today. He had a reason for me to buy now, and I did. I bought the car that day because I could get that special interest rate. So here's the rule. Always, in your back pocket, you should always have a special reason for them to buy now rather than put off the decision for a week or a month. Because if customers have no reason to buy now, then they'll put off the decision forever. Now, here are some questions that you can ask and answer based on what you have learned in this lesson. These are questions that will help you to think about how you can apply these ideas. Number one question, what are the major factors in our fast-paced world that are affecting your sales today? Question two, what will you need to do more of, or less of, or start doing to succeed in the market of tomorrow? Remember, you're going to have to change something, do more or less or something new in order to move to the top of your field. Third question, What are some of the biggest changes in customers and product service offerings affecting your sales today, especially offerings of your competitors? What's going on in the marketplace that's affecting your level of business? Number 4, list 3 qualities or characteristics of the ideal customer for you. This is the customer who can and will buy from you the fastest, the one that has the most pressing need, that has the money, that has the desire, and the kind of customer that you get along with personally the very best. Question 5. What are the most important things you need to learn about your customers before you can call on them? What are the demographics? What are the psychographics? What do you need to find out so that you have high credibility when you go in to see them for the first time? Question 6. Why don't qualified customers buy from you? What holds them back? Sometimes there's just one reason why customers are not buying your product or service. And if you can find that reason and you can neutralize it, you can double your sales. Every great company has found a way to neutralize the reason that holds customers back. And we'll talk about some of the things you can do to achieve that later on. And question number 7, what can you do to create a sense of urgency in making the buying decision with each customer? This alone can increase your sales dramatically. And here's the final question. What one action are you going to take immediately as a result of what you have learned in this session? Remember, action is everything. Decide to take one action and then take that action immediately at the very first opportunity.